So we're going to formally start this session. I'm Jan Vermund, if you don't know me. I'm one of the partners of Wendbridge, and Beat is the other one. Annika is also here. She's also from Wendbridge. She will be leading us then through, for us, the evening and the Q&A in the end. And of course, Jim Kalbach is also here, which we are very delighted to have. And so thank you very much, Jim, for joining us here. I actually think if you don't need that much of an introduction, but what is really important to say is, so I have it here, that's your recent book, The Jobs to Done Playbook. If you don't have it, you should go get it. It's a really great book to start with jobs to be done. So Jim and us, Wendbridge, I think we've exchanged over the recent time and now and again, and I think it's fair to say, so I just kind of thought this before, that I think we both approach it from a very practical point of view. So we're both in a very about applying jobs to be done, and this book is really also lays out plays on how to actually really apply it and use it. And we both come from this very practical practitioner perspective. And I think that's kind of where we instantly linked and seen some similarities in how we think about jobs to be done. And one of the great topics, as Jan mentioned before, is okay, you might love this. You might be somebody in the company who loves jobs to be done, who has that spark for the customer. But okay, how to get others to share that same spark, the same fire, the same love for the customer, and how to actually get from spark to wildfire. And this is what today is going to be about, and how to keep the customer at the table, because very often also we experience people like either ourselves or people in UX. You might experience a situation where you have a great research, you do some jobs to be done work, but then the doors close, right? So you kind of drop out of the development process, the customer loses, is no longer at the table, and that kind of is what we don't want to have happen.
Yeah, maybe the contrary of this is the next slide. We've seen in the last 15 years, since we are on this journey to make customer-focused innovations, strategies that really add values to the consumers and to the users, we've seen that too often that the flame is extinguishing. We see enthusiastic starts in projects, visionary leaders or project managers with their teams, they start, have good ideas, then things become complicated, difficulties occur, other people in the organization are kind of blocking it, and the project derails. And then the result very often is that either nothing is done, also our work sometimes ends up in the drawer, or that the innovation that is developed really is not really adding value and it's not really useful. And I was a bit surprised. I worked in my previous life, I worked in P&G, and basically every day we're talking about consumer needs, insights, and we focused everything on this. And I was surprised when I moved out of P&G into other companies to see that this is not really the center of everything. And in this journey, we really thought jobs to be done thinking is the only concept, or the most powerful concept, to gather the troops and to really align behind customer needs, consumer needs, or user needs. And that's really why we are so positive and so enthusiastic about this concept. And that's why we love jobs to be done. Jim, what is your journey with jobs to be done?
Yeah, so I have a background in user-centered design, UX, design strategy, innovation, and I've worked mostly internally, right? So I've only worked a small part of my career as an external consultant. So usually I was inside of organizations, sometimes very large organizations, but working from kind of the inside out, but always with a human-centered mindset and always trying to fight against I call them antibodies. There's organizational antibodies that, as much as, and it was interesting because the people around me all believed in customer centricity. And then when you actually go to do it, like there's some invisible antibody that prevents even the most good-willed people from actually carrying through on their intentions about being customer centric. But for me, jobs to be done, I think, was always a very powerful language in kind of a range of approaches and tools that I had. So, from the UX side, obviously things like personas and journey maps, and I wrote a whole book on journey maps and things like that. And I see jobs to be done as unique, first of all, but I also see it as one way. It's not the only way, but it's one way. And I think in this kind of fight against the corporate antibodies that work against us, I always felt like I needed as many different approaches as I could. That was my secret weapon, was having a lot of secret weapons, right? And sometimes you need to use language and tools from one field and sometimes from another. But for me, jobs to be done is the most comprehensive one, right? And it's also the most universal one that isn't owned by any one discipline, right? So I found a lot of the design techniques that I used, which were very, very similar and very customer centric. It was like something that designers like owned. And then they would say, here, ta-da, here's the results, and then people would say, yeah, but you're just a designer. So I find jobs to be done much more universal across the organization. That's why I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, that's really also our experience. When you bring this, people don't want to drill, they want a hole in the wall. Yeah. This is like intuitively, some people really grab it immediately and it moves them away. And how do you define job to be done? I mean, we use the Clayton Christensen definition very often, which we think is the best one, but there's so many definitions out there. I would like to hear how you define it.
I mean, ultimately, I use this quote all the time to explain jobs to be done, because I think what's behind these words are to focus on the end and not the means, that the drill is a means to an end, and you want to focus on the end. So in other words, start with the outcome and work back towards the technology, not the other way around. And it's really that perspective. So for me, jobs to be done embodies a perspective. And you just used the word jobs thinking, I think. I use that in my book as well, too. Jobs thinking. And it's really that lens or that perspective that jobs to be done gives you that I think is really important. So my textbook definition of a job is an objective that a person has under a specific set of circumstances, right? So it's really what somebody's striving to accomplish. And notice I didn't use the word user or customer, because I think when you use the word user or customer, that assumes a relationship to your product or your solution. So I like to talk about humans and individuals and people and because that's your starting point. Obviously, you want to sell them drills, right? We all want to sell our customers drills. But what this quote says is, you know what? Opportunity comes from looking at the outcome that human beings have and not only your own product.
Yeah, I mean, these antibodies, like or companies are in love with their technology, or they're in love with their sales, or management is in love with the profit. And jobs to be done is kind of universal.
Exactly.
How has Mural, I mean, you work at Mural.
Yeah.
How has Mural embraced it? How far are you there?
It's really interesting. Mural has a really interesting journey, because during the pandemic, we have 4 or 5 times the amount of employees. So a year ago, we were like a small startup, and I really wasn't thinking about, how do I institutionalize jobs to be done at Mural? It was just me working with my teams, because it was very small, right? So I have some examples from Mural where I used jobs to be done. Luckily, our head of product is very sensitive and aware of jobs to be done. So we have some nice stories out there on how we used it to help do road mapping and things like that. But I didn't necessarily explicitly, like I said, try to institutionalize jobs to be done. I would just use the techniques and sometimes not even tell others that that's what we were doing. So it was a lot more, again, it was about the thinking. It wasn't about the label. It wasn't about the territory. I just had this debate with Jared Spool. I don't know if anybody saw my debate with Jared Spool. UX is this and jobs to be done is that. Like, no, okay, no, that's not helpful. Like, so I have a very egalitarian view of all of these methods. And like I said, I like to use the tool that is best for the situation. And I find jobs to be done is usually the best one in any case.
I love this because it's a very jobs to be done perspective on jobs to be done itself. So that's kind of this almost meta relationship.
It's a thinking, huh? And we have a case from the Swiss Railway Company. So that's a company with lots of antibodies, and
Right.
not negatively, but they have to make sure that the trains arrive in time. Thousands of trains every minute. I mean, I counted one in Zurich. You have every minute 4 trains leaving and another 4 trains arriving. So this
Incredible.
is complicated.
Yeah.
Jan, present us this case where the spark.
Yeah. So we'll just so how this will going to go is we'll present the case, and then Jim will present the case, and this is exactly the railway case that Beat mentioned. So where we kind of really managed to get from spark to wildfire, and then we want to show a little bit how this happened, and we reflect on why we believe that this happened. So it started on the very left in really the coaching innovation team. So that was kind of like a group of 50 crazy people within a very traditional Swiss railway company, but the CEO then allowed this to happen, and we kind of managed to get in. And we started with very small pilots, and the first one was on the bottom left, so to get from A to B in a hilly suburb, and which led to a second small pilot, which was about get from A to B as a teenager in the countryside. So those of you who know Switzerland maybe have a clue that this is very, very Swiss. So these are challenges that are very, very related to how Switzerland works. And just to give you an idea, so getting from A to B as a teenager in the countryside was about a rather small village somewhere in the rather remote area between 2 cities in Switzerland, which had 1 train connecting it to 2 larger cities. And that train wasn't really used or not used as much as Swiss Railways would have liked. So the question they had is, what can we do to kind of prevent teenagers from jump to cars and bikes and motorbikes? And that was the project that we did in there. So 2 pilots. These 2 pilots were kind of the most famous ones. There were other discussions and jobs to be done, ways of applying it within the innovation team, and that kind of bubbled up. So that got a lot of attention, which then led to projects in the core business. So we kind of jumped this motor, however you want to call it, and we had 2 really big projects within really the core business. So one was getting from A to B for a digital assistant they developed. So that was really for an app that accompanies people during their going from A to B, and then dealing with an interruption. So that was really, if something goes wrong, how can you help people in that situation, manage that situation where a train is derailed or a connection doesn't work. And what then happened, which is kind of the magic and the proof that it really worked, that it went from spark to wildfire, is that they started doing jobs to be done on their own. So we kind of stopped, unfortunately, but that's great, stopped working with them. So they started to run jobs on projects on their own, working. So they focused on working while going from A to B or setting up a mobile working space. And they really started to apply it themselves. And that was kind of the proof that the spark wasn't lost. So we want to go a little bit into why we believe this happened, or what actually led to this bubbling up, and that in the end they actually didn't lose the spark.
So I think one reason why we think a spark can become a wildfire in an organization is because we have a process. This is a proven process. We have applied that many times, and a process gives comfort. It tells exactly, we do this, and then we do this, and then we do this, and this gives people and organizations kind of a comfort and confidence that it will work. This process can be applied, and we apply it from small to big. So even if you've seen these experiments in the valley, which was a really tiny project for us, was we applied this. We went from framing to discover to spin to develop in a very structured way. What is interesting, or what we believe in this process is strong, is that in the first 2 steps, we are beyond solutions. We're not talking technology, we're not talking strategy. We are really talking only solution agnostic customer. We want to understand what's the job they try to achieve, how do they achieve their jobs, what metrics do they apply, criteria do they apply to decide if a job is done well or not. Each step in here is a value in itself. Sometimes we do projects where we only frame. Sometimes we do projects where we only discover in a qualitative way or in a quantitative way. And sometimes even we only spin. If companies have already a good understanding of the customer and have a foundation, how we call it, and this foundation is kind of job to be done like, then we only spin or we develop value proposition on it. So that, I think that's important. So it's a process. In each of these processes, we have some tools and some instruments. All these tools are highly evolving, and we will illustrate and demonstrate one tool, which is the job to be done hierarchy as the next step.
Yeah. So we'll go into this a little bit in more detail, and I'll give then over to Jim. I think, so just to introduce the hierarchy, so this is what we use in Frame, and I think that was also something where we were really close in thinking. So as soon as you start applying jobs to be done, you really get into trouble, because there are a lot of jobs that people do, and if you want to apply it, something like the hierarchy, and we use the hierarchy as a tool, can really help to structure this discussion. And it helps to think in those 3 steps. We call this bigger why, focus, job, and lower how. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but you were speaking about aspirations, focus, job, and then what's the lower how, or I'm not sure what.
Step or small. I think I call it big and small in the book, but yeah, it's
right.
Yeah, similar, very similar.
So this is the hierarchy. So this, we usually build this as a first hypothesis. And what we want to do right now is jump over to Mural. So I'll stop sharing the screen, just to give you a glimpse of how this can work in a workshop.
Yeah, I'm actually calling what you call a focus job. I've recently started to call it a target job. So very similar.
That's nice.
Because I think there's a decision that you need to make on what is your focus going to be. And I think that's really powerful for innovation, to have that focus, right? So that's what we have here. So with the Swiss rail, it's to get from A to B. And then we have what I would call the job steps here: to plan the journey, prepare the journey, to go to the means of travel, to travel, and so forth. What I find these steps do is they kind of outline, it's a scaffolding of that space, getting from A to B. You have this nice scaffolding, but that alone can be the basis for a conversation. And I have some examples later where I'll show you how we can facilitate a conversation. So yeah, you can go out and quantify things, and that's really important as well too. But you also have a team internally, because we're kind of talking about adoption. So what I've always tried to do when I use jobs to be done is think about in what ways can I invite people into the process so that there's buy-in, and so that there's also understanding as you go. And it's not just a magic show where you do something and nobody's involved, and then at the end you say, here's the answer, right? Because you almost never get buy-in if you don't involve people along the way, right?
Yeah.
That's why I love your spin phase. It's a great. So the types of things that I might do in a quote unquote spin phase would be to get a team together. And we have a team. It's going to be me, Jan, Beat, and Annika. And what we're going to do is we're going to individually just grab a star and think through this travel journey and say, where's the biggest opportunity for us? Or where's the biggest set of pain points, by just placing a star on this job map.
Oh, mine vanished.
Oh, it went to the back. Sorry, you got to put it to the front here. Wait, hold on a second. Hold on 1 second, please.
I'll put it there.
I'll unlock and I'll put this to the back. There you go. Now it should be on.
Right. So I put it on twice. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can do that here. So I'm going to put it there. And I think what I've always found is when you do this type of thing where it's silent or anonymous and people just kind of vote, right? And say, hey, where would you, if we were to change our solution, or we want to innovate, where would we innovate? Just having that conversation is really important, not only for including people, but sometimes you can have really good discussions around that. So I see, was that Jan? You said go to the means of travel? Is that you?
Yeah.
And then I put it on change means, but both Beat and Annika had to deal with disruptions. Yeah. So Jan, why did you say go to the means? What were you thinking there as a biggest?
Well, I just went from my experience. That's always for me the biggest pain, because I always have to. The problem is that their trains are punctual. They leave. So
it sucks to be Swiss, huh?
So that's
those trains always leave on time. Damn it.
My problem is that they're actually on time. So that always causes me.
Yeah, exactly. I spend in a week every day in trains, and and I'm very scheduled, and so when there is a disruption in the train schedule, then so again, it's a personal bias totally
that
personal,
I put in here.
Yeah, right. I put and Annika, you also had disruption too.
Yeah, I'm commuting a lot of time, and I have to study like 2 hours away. So if there are disruptions, it's awful.
Right. And then you miss your class, and
Exactly.
you get home hours late or something like that. I put change means of travel. I don't know. I just always find myself, particularly in Europe, like running from one platform to the other. You ever do that? Like with your suitcase?
Yeah.
Like, crap, I came in on track
That's true.
1 and I got to leave on track 50, and you're like knocking people over.
Yeah. But then finding which platform to go on. That was.
But you know what I love? When a train comes in and it's the platform right across, and the other train is like timed. You ever have that? And the doors open, you just walk over to the other train.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a good example, but that always doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think, so here's the thing about the conversation that we just had. It's not quantitative, right? But what it gets at to is why. What is the logic that people carry with them, right? Obviously, you can go out and talk to people, but I think the logic that the team has, the team that's actually going to be coming up with the solution, I think that's really important to get in touch with, and it's important for buy-in. That people have opinions, and it's a nice way to get their opinions out. And then you can bring the data in, which I think we're going to do in a minute. We're going to look at the data and see if it aligns with what we thought. But just for the sake of the next step in the exercise, would you guys agree to deal with disruptions as the biggest area that we could focus on? So Jan and we'd have to move our stars over to meet
Right. Okay.
yeah.
For democracy's sake, I will.
For democracy's sake, there you go. So what we're going to do now is we're going to brainstorm pain points. So again, just kind of based on our own experience, but also our knowledge of the market. What are pain points around dealing with disruptions? And you guys just mentioned a couple. I think maybe we can repeat those. What was your pain point, Annika?
Be late for class or work for an appointment.
Missing, right? Yeah, just being late, right? Being late for that scheduled appointment, right? Because the train schedule changes, but your schedule doesn't change. That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
What else? You have one, Beat?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a nice one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Beat is writing so he doesn't know if his ticket is still valid or not.
Oh.
Yeah,
So
especially
you have to change the train.
these discount tickets which you book.
Yeah.
And you have to
Right.
take exactly this train, and
Right,
then suddenly
yeah.
the train is late, and I missed the connection, and then
Right.
this ticket's still valid.
Right. I have a similar one. What alternatives are available? Because sometimes with that
Yeah.
ticket, you might not have another alternative there. It's like, well, can I get on that train? Yeah, but it's only business class seats that are free. And okay, but you can't take that with this ticket. So, okay, what else can I do other than a train? There's all kinds of your mind starts going through. What else can I do to get there on time? Right.
Yeah. I had exactly this one. So
Alternative ways. Yeah.
should I wait or should I change?
Right.
So
Exactly.
I'm in the train. I know something is wrong. Should I wait until it's resolved or should I change? Because I'm sure that when I go out of the train, it will start moving again. So
Yeah. I remember one time I was going from Hamburg down to Stuttgart on the train, and we got disrupted, I think in Würzburg or something like that. And then we decided to rent a car. But it took us so long to rent the car and actually get it. We probably could have walked there in that time. So we decided to change the train, but it was really bad. But you don't know that at that moment, right? That's the pain point, right?
Yeah.
Catch the last train at night, right? Yeah, last train. There you go.
This was in this valley, that they were out partying, the people, and then catch the last train.
Yeah.
So.
Right. So here, just as a team, right? As a team, we came together. We got stuff off of our chest. We had some agreement, but the basis is jobs to be done, right? The conversation here is about jobs to be done, and we didn't talk about any solutions, either on the problem side or even these pain points. We're not talking about solutions as well, too, right? What we could then do is we can continue this conversation. We could also go back out to our markets and ask them what their pain points are and collect all of them, right? But it starts giving us a nice hypothesis to work from.
Yeah. Great. So should we pick it up from here? So thank you very much, Jim. So this is exactly as you say. So our experience where we have the same experience where we basically, you can invite a lot of people to join in and do such a job map, right? Because it's really something everybody can do, and you don't have to know anything about design or whatever. So it's really an invite to everybody to join. So okay. I think Are you seeing my screen or not?
I see your screen. Try again.
Does that work?
Yeah, now it
Yeah,
works.
perfect.
Okay, so you see the sticky notes. So that is basically just to show the pain points that we wrote down. We call those job metrics, and there's a certain way of framing it, but this is exactly how you can do it, right? On a qualitative way, come together, you have a discussion, you focus on a step, and you find those job metrics. But I don't want to say too much. I think Beat, you want to pick up here as well.
We do exactly what Jim just said. We first, in the framing phase, we do it internally with the people, with the teams, and then we go out to the people, to the users or customers, which we recruit, and there we have a conversation, exactly this conversation, but framed from the job to be done view. So not talking about solutions, not talking about technology, but really talking about how do you, okay, what are the steps? What are you doing? What goes wrong when you do this? What takes time, etc. And then we collect these metrics. And I mean, just in the 5 minutes before, we've collected 5-6 metrics. If we do that with 20 people over each one of them 45 minutes, we have easily 100 of these metrics that we pick up, that we phrase in a very special way. It is written in natural language of the people, of the consumers, and it always has a very precise unit in it to make it measurable. Designers typically love these statements because they are precise. They give a clear guidance where to go in the design process. Customers also love it because it really takes them by the heart. I mean, we always ask at the end of the interview, how did you find it? And we have 95% really positive feedback. They feel understood. They can think in these metrics. And we came to the strong belief that jobs to be done without these metrics, well, let's put it differently. Jobs to be done with these metrics becomes really powerful. Jobs to be done without this metric is also useful, but really the metrics make the difference, because that makes it so precise and so measurable. And there is another advantage, because consumers or people love it, and because there's no solution in it, we can validate it. And that's on the next slide. So imagine we have 100 of these metrics, and then we go into validation. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So what you can do is, I mean, just a word on quantification, and Jim rightly mentioned that before. So sometimes it makes sense to quantify, sometimes it doesn't. So if you imagine if you have a project and you want to put several millions behind that, then probably makes sense to get a stronger feel. So for some purposes, qualitative is exactly what you need, and it should always make sense. I think that is kind of what we're trying to get at and say here. So you have to imagine from left to right, that's the whole user journey, so what we mapped out, and we have 100 of those job metrics that go along the journey. And you can ask people how important each of those metrics is to them. And you get that blue line. The blue line is the importance rating of each of those job metrics along the journey. What's nice about this, right? So one of the things why this helps to actually spread jobs to be done, because a whole other set of people within the company will actually look at this. For example, management, because it adds numbers. It adds numbers, it adds data, and that is always something that management and some other people within the company just love and base their decision on. Now, importance is one thing, right? So that is one part of how you can quantify. The other thing we always do is not only ask customers, real customers, so here was about, I think, 900 or something, to rate those metrics, not only in terms of importance, but the red line as well, so in terms of fulfillment. So how fulfilled are they today with the means that they have to actually get those metrics done? How well is it kind of satisfied or solved in the market? And what this gets you is pain areas. So you know those clear areas where importance is very high, but satisfaction is very low, or fulfillment is very low. That's a clear guidance for innovation and the teams, which really then also helps to spread jobs to be done, because it rallies people around customer pain facts, right? So you have a fact-based view of what actually matters in the market, and there we all have to go. We have a clear direction of where we want to go.
Yeah, this slide really, we've stolen this slide, you know. Jochen, a client of us, after a project, went up to the flip chart and he draws it. And he said, look, before this project, the regions were debating, in our region, this is the customer need, in our region, it's this. And then the Europeans said, no, it's this. And then the French and the Germans. So there was a lot of debate going on. Then the salespeople said, no, 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 it's not true. That's where the unmet need is. And then the tech people said, no, it's this. And UX said this, and market. So it was a lot of debate, and they were just like, and he went up, draw this on the flip chart and says, this changed the game, because suddenly people are not talking about what could be the customer need, but they were talking about how can we address these customer needs. It really reunified, because it became so clear with this quantification where to focus on what the issue was. The moment you the company accepted the methodology and jobs to be done thinking, it became clear. And they then focused on actually very disciplined and rigorous way. They implemented according to this map. So it has a great alignment power.
Okay, so I'm just looking a little bit at the time. So let's say I mean, this could be, we can talk about spin a little bit, also maybe in the discussion, because I'm just looking at time. I think it would be great to give it over to Jim so that he can present his cases. We can talk about spin phase a little bit later, just because of time issues. So that would be kind of what spin from our view involves, but I think we're all also here to hear what Jim has to say. So I'll stop sharing here, and Jim, if you want to have a go. So you're still on mute. I'm sorry.
That's a rookie mistake. Yeah, I want to give two examples from my own work. The first, going back to my previous company, I used to work at Citrix, and they make GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar. And I was actually working with the GoToWebinar team, and we did a jobs to be done investigation. We did the research, extracted the steps, but we also extracted all of those metrics. And at the time, we were following Stratagen's ODI, Tony Ulwick's ODI methodology. We didn't know about what you guys were doing. So we're using Tony's method. And we had this survey. So we were trying to quantify, after we created the job map, we were trying to quantify the pain points with those two questions around importance and satisfaction. And what that allowed us to do was to take all of our metrics and we could stack rank them. We could calculate a score using a formula to calculate a score. And what we could see is where the biggest gaps were from top to bottom, right? So we found all the metrics, we prioritized them. And then we started to looking at the top sets, you know, the top 5 and how we could prioritize those and things like that. But before we actually surveyed the market, so I think the sample size on this was 300 or 400. I forget how many people we asked, but it was a, you know, quantitative sample size here. The interesting thing was before we sent it out to the market, or maybe at the same time, we actually asked our product team to take the survey. So, you know, we talked about engaging other people inside of your organization through discussions like the one we just simulated, but you can also, you know, have them involved in the research by actually taking the survey. And these initials here, these are the initials of the product team. And what we looked at, we took the top 5. So the market said the outcomes there, those are the top 5 that the market said, those are the biggest pain points. And what we saw was who ranked those themselves using their own intuition, who ranked those as the top pain points. And you can see there's, you know, they didn't do very well, right? These are people making decisions about our product strategy. And they really only got one, like if you look at this one right here, increase the ease with which attendees can join, right? Everybody kind of said, yeah, that's obvious, right? They kind of got that one. At the time, we were actually looking at several things. Obviously, we were, you know, looking at product design and things like that. But we were actually undergoing a big pricing repackaging initiative. And what we wanted to know is if we had different tiers of pricing, right, what would people find valuable? And what we tried to do was map our feature sets back to these pain points to say, well, if this pain point is important to solve, how are we actually solving that? And that's what this shows here. So we looked at those top pain points, and we were like, well, how are we charging for this? Or, well, it was two steps. The first was what features actually support that, and then how are we looking at those features as a pricing differentiation? And it was interesting because the one that the team all guessed as important, we weren't actually leveraging that at all. A, we didn't have a lot of features to support that, and B, it wasn't one of the dimensions in the pricing package either. So one of the things that I learned from this was that sometimes not only do organizations have antibodies, they also have blind spots, and they have blind spots because they're too close to it, right? Oh, there's a great German word, right? Betriebsblindheit, right? That there's this, they're too close. They're too close to it, right? So I didn't do anything other than hold up a mirror and say, you guys already know this, that getting attendees to join, but you're not doing anything with it. So I didn't add any net new information back to the organization. I just allowed them to act on it and see it in a different way. So thinking about how you're going to engage the organization is really important, because you might be just showing them something they already know, and that's important though. And I know you guys have seen that too in your work.
I agree. So we make that experience as well, where you make a study, and one of the results is, yes, we know,
yeah.
And then we always follow up this. Okay, and what are you doing about it?
Right. Yeah.
And then they shrug shoulders. So that's very important to make them experience this outside view.
And that's why we created this spin. I mean, this spin phase is like an artificial phase.
Yeah.
Usually you have the results, you have the insights,
Exactly.
and you go into develop. But we found it key to have this spinning in between, where we kick the ideas that are around.
Right.
Very often it's already projects going, and we kick them towards the customer. And that little kick, where we link solution free and solution together, really has a great impact.
Yep, totally. So the other example, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about something I just did very, very recently, a couple of weeks ago, where here at Mural, I created a job map that I've used in many different situations. But one thing that we're looking at here at Mural is post-pandemic, when companies return to the office. They're talking about going back to the office. Some companies have already started opening up their offices. In Australia, they're already kind of back. But the big keyword is hybrid. What a lot of companies have learned is, yes, they can be effective with remote workers. And what employees have learned is they love working remote, some of them, not all of them, and they don't want to give it up. So they're talking about this hybrid situation, which isn't necessarily new, but I think the way that hybrid work happens in the future can't be like it was in the past, that we have to kind of fix it. So we've been talking a lot about hybrid work. And going back to the office. And what I did was I took a job map that we have around facilitating a workshop. So I've had this job map that how do you facilitate a workshop? And there's a before, during, and after. So you plan, you set it up, you prepare, then you initiate the workshop, you collaborate, you synthesize, you conclude, and then afterwards you consolidate and you share, and then you end. And within those phases, I have some more specific steps like we just saw there as well too. But this is a structure that I created a number of years ago, 5 years ago, from research. And the thing about jobs to be done is that you have this longevity, right? Like the one we saw for the Swiss rail. Like, guess what? 50 years ago, that's what happened with train travel. And in 10 years, it's probably going to be the same steps, right, Beth?
Absolutely. I mean, COVID hit them hard because basically the traffic volume dropped substantially, and they stopped everything, and now we start again. And it's exactly this hybrid question. What's the hybrid impact for the rail?
Yeah. Right.
So the discussion starts again, and it's exactly.
But you can pull out that job map and use that job map as the first discussion.
And we just propose, don't do anything new. Just take what we had pre-COVID and put it into a quant and do it post-COVID.
And then you do it there, yeah. So I pulled this job map out, but what I did was I gave a team of people. We had about 12 people. It's actually too many. More people showed up than I thought. But what I did is I gave them a scenario, and I said, imagine you're facilitating a hybrid workshop and you're the facilitator. Now, they had never seen the job map before, and some of them weren't actually facilitators, but they were all, based on that scenario in the job map, they were all able to participate. and say, okay, I have half of my workshop is co-located in an office space and half of them are remote. What are my pain points as the facilitator? And that's what you see down here. So what we did is, because I break up my job map, I usually break up my job maps into 3 parts: before, during, and after. What I did was we just focused on the before and we brainstormed for 3 minutes. It was more like 5 minutes in reality. And then we clustered and talked about it. And then we stopped and we brainstormed in the during, and then we brainstormed the after. And each time we clustered and discussed them, right? So we came up with all of these pain point areas, different rules, different access to resources. How do you manage roles and responsibilities? Equal participation and inclusivity. These are all big pain points that we had, right? Completely qualitative. We just brainstormed these, right? So we didn't do any quantification here. But what we did is we looked at all of these and we asked people in our network if these are pain points. And we actually collected all of these, and we're writing a blog post on this. If you're facilitating hybrid work, what do you have to look out for? So we weren't even looking for like a product solution. We just wanted to be able to consult our clients, right? So there's no product change here. It's just, we have to tell our clients when they go back to the office, how can they use Mural, or how can Mural help them here, right? So it's more of an education play that we were doing on this one.
I love this. I mean, it's also using it for, I mean, as you said, so usually we think about innovation and product development, and this is kind of making content plan, right? So and jobs to be done can even help there. So I love the example.
But that goes back to the idea that jobs to be done can speak to different parts of your organization as well too. And I find some of the things that are very, very UX specific, and I see it now all the time. It's like, you have a digital UI and you want to fix that digital UI. Well, guess what? If you go to the marketing team or the sales team or customer success, they're like, yeah, but I'm not I don't create software. They're part of the same organization, but they have different concerns, like educating the market, right? If you're marketing, you might have a content strategy that you need, right? This helps inform our content strategy, right? It has nothing to do with digital UIs, right? So with jobs to be done, you're able to have that human-centered mindset and talk to all parts of the organization.
Yeah, that's really nice. So it goes back really to this. It's a logic. Okay, I'm sorry. I shut up.
Exactly. Yeah, so I see we have like 13 minutes left in the scheduled time. I'd love to get into some questions.
Sure. So please feel free. So either put it in the chat, but Annika is gladly gonna. And I don't know if there were any before in the chat. I have no clue.
So there was one from Brian, but I think Jim already gave an answer. Brian, are you happy with that, or would you like to extend your question maybe?
Maybe share it with all of us.
Yeah. Why don't you read it off, Brian?
Sure. Let me see. I switched devices now.
Okay.
So let me see if I can find it. No, I don't see my chat as it was.
I can read it if that's okay.
Yeah.
Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, so Brian wrote, one of the many things I learned from the book, I think you're thinking my book here, because I think this is one of my sentences. People employ products and services to get their job done, not to interact with your organization. And your comment was, this is usually a surprise for most people. Do you think this is a cause for resistance to jobs to be done? And I think it might be. I think that's a little harsh and extreme. And I wrote it in that way to kind of shock people. And I get reactions from that, particularly from marketing people and brand people. It's like, no, people love my brand. That's why they come to me. And I say, yes, I want the branding and the marketing team. But guess what? Organizations talk about themselves all the time. In addition to the antibodies that you have, you also have this addiction to and I think you even mentioned the word addiction, Beat, right? Organizations are addicted to talking about themselves. Here's my point. Any organization will naturally talk about itself, its own products and its own brand at length. You have no problem convincing people to talk about themselves, right?
Yeah.
Just give me 1%. I just want 1% of the time to suspend belief in reality and talk about what the human beings that you serve want. That's it.
One of the key issues, but before the remote time, when we did things like face-to-face interviews, and we took clients along, and they were in the room, they were always defensive. Customer was saying, no, this is not working well. And then you had the developer saying, yeah, but did we have this function?
Right. Yeah.
So it's very defensive.
Right.
And now we didn't mention that when we do remote interviews, we always invite the clients to join in. It's really great.
Yeah.
They listen to it, and we do the interviews, and it helps a lot again to spread the gospel.
Yep.
Yeah. What you can also do, I mean, if so in these interviews, we usually, I mean, we invite everybody to join and listen in, or we put together a certain clip, right? So where you put together a highlight clip and you use that and to spread it, I mean, within GDPR compliance, but you can use that to spread it within the organization and then really make them hear. So that's a way of listening to the customer, because probably they might not have the time to stay for an hour and listen to a customer interview, but they will watch a 5-10 minute clip.
Yep.
So that's one of the things where they really have the, I think you framed it also that way, have that out of body experience almost, like where they finally see themselves from outside. Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and so the language there, I think, that you picked out, Brian, is really a way that I was using to describe the theory. And the theory is that people will pull products and services into their lives that solve a problem that they have. They don't pull brands in. They pull the outcomes that they get into themselves. So it's just, it might be a little provocative, but it's just a plea to shift your thinking and have that out of body experience a little bit as well too. Was that a good answer, Brian?
Certainly.
Okay.
There's a question from Charlotte, I think.
Yes.
So Charlotte, do you want to come on mic and ask it, or? Okay, so then I'll read it out. So the question from her was, I think that's for us, right? Did you consult teenagers for customer journey? Okay, yeah. So that was, I mean, the question is great because that was actually one of the things they were skeptical about, right? Does it work with teenagers? Because that's a whole different set of people. And yes, so we went there and talked to 20-something, so not in the age, but about 15 or 20 teenagers, and it actually works. Because you're not talking about something complicated. You're talking about why do you use the bike? Did you buy a motorcycle? When do you plan to get your license done? And that's just, yeah, it works.
I remember this Saturday morning where I had to get up at 6 o'clock.
Oh yes, thank you.
Because we did it on site, and then it was very authentic. You know, we learned and very quick fix. We learned, for example, good hypothesis. They wanted to go out. They wanted, last train was going at 12 o'clock midnight. And then in the morning, Saturday morning and Sunday morning, the schedule was finishing at midnight and starting at 6 o'clock in the morning. So a simple schedule change by running till 2 o'clock in the morning and starting at 8 o'clock, no additional costs, solved already a pain point.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have an input from Andres. Would you like to share it with us, Andres?
Yes, I think we're all struggling in having people accept job to be done, and we're all very enthusiastic about it, and we're really convinced that this is the answer, and I am too, and I've been for 10-15 years. Problem being that we're acting exactly like product-centered people.
Yeah.
Because what this makes us do, because we're so damn enthusiastic, we lead with the solution rather than to the solution. We start with we try to lead with a method. And I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to talk to Tony Ulwick for a couple of hours. And one of the questions I just had to ask him, I said, Tony, how do you sell this? This is quite a hard thing to sell. And whether he was absolutely truthful or not, I can't say for sure. But what he said, well, it's really hard to sell. We don't sell it. People come to us. Mm. We write books. We have seminars. The people who are really in pain and who really need our help, they find us. Trying to find them is a very, very expensive and way of selling. It's extremely expensive, long sales processes, loads of meetings, few decisions, lots of talk, little buying.
So I'm not a consultant. I actually have a day job, and I'm not selling jobs to be done. And the example that I just showed around brainstorming, I actually didn't use the word jobs to be done. It was actually a tool that I used because I wanted to have this brainstorming session. It was just my natural way. It was, okay, I have a group of 12 people and we have to have a guided conversation. And I used the job map to do that, but I didn't use the word jobs to be done. In fact, they didn't know that I was even doing a job map. And I've done that in my career as well, too, where I'll either mix and match methods or not call it jobs to be done.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think that's the way to go, because in the very second we talk about the framework, a solution, and so on, and we, especially when we do it too early, in the dialogue with the customer, we dig our own grave.
In another example, I was just coaching a friend in another company, and he's part of their user research team. And they had this massive architecture around their space. It was basically kind of employment and payroll space. And they had this all mapped out, all of the different journeys. They were calling them journeys. They kept calling them journeys. And I looked and I said, dude, that's just a landscape of jobs. And he said, you know what? I'm not gonna call them jobs because it won't get taken up in my organization. We call them journeys. And I said, that's fine. Just make sure your journeys, jobs, have the right language and grammar to it. So he basically white labeled jobs to be done. Yeah. He used the logic behind jobs to be done, but didn't call it jobs to be done.
We do that. We do that quite often. When we work, I mean, jobs to be done since 5 years is kind of on the rise, and people start to know it. And I think Osterwalder's work on the value proposition design and promoted it quite a bit. Before that time, we have never really used the word jobs to be done. We talked about goals, purpose, objectives, and so on, and map it. And even at the time when we worked with Tony, I mean, my previous partner in Bentbridge, he worked with Tony from 2000 to 2010. Jobs to be done was not really a word to use. And let's face it, in Procter, when I was a little assistant, my boss said, you go do home visits, go and talk to the housewives, to the consumers. Huh? And I said, but what do I talk? What do I ask? And says, just look what they are doing. Just look what they try to achieve. That was jobs to be done at the time. So
it's a really good point, Anders, though. Thanks for that.
We should take this as a care, Anders. We should not push the methodology. Just do it. So very point taken.
And to add another comment, I think our challenge is a little bit that the job to be done that we hope that our customers have or perceive as customers, if we would interview them about their target outcomes and they would be truthfully honest, there would come out some dark truths, like the matter of fact that they don't want to risk their beloved product to be affected by anything. They would like to maximize the support of everyone else in the organization. They would like to minimize the risk of disturbances in their design, and so on and so forth. That's the true, because they're not in it for the business always.
Could be. That depends. So I think we have two who want to jump in. So Frank and Wolfram, if you want to join the discussion, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, I just wanted to back the discussion, and I can fully support what you said. I also sometimes use the wrong terms, like I talk about a use case instead of a job to be done, because it doesn't matter. They understand what a use case is, and they don't want to hear jobs to be done. That's your area. I don't want to be in there. But use case, that's what I understand, and it doesn't matter. It's a wrong term, but doesn't matter. That's what I just can support. I do this very often to get the buy-in and talk about needs instead of jobs to be done and stuff. So this is easier to understand. And someone just said, just do it. I also agree on that. I just did it. I didn't ask, can I create a job map, blah, blah, blah. I just did it summarized the research, presented it, and talked with the PO and my Scrum Master about it and the team. And it was really helpful. So because they understood how I clustered, or with the team, the UX team, how we clustered the needs on a job map, more than 100, but we clustered them, and we had groups of needs, and the PO could pick one, some groups where to focus on, similar to what you did before. And it really helped to narrow down from more than 100 needs we found out. No one knew which is the most important one. This helped to prioritize some of them and to move forward and to present it to stakeholders and then talk with them about next steps. That's why just do it is good, and not ask for, can I do jobs to be done? You won't get approval for that.
Yeah, if it leads to the outcome that we want with jobs to be done, then that's then that's what we want. Like, yeah, absolutely.
And even if we don't talk about jobs to be done, it's just about these needs, and it doesn't matter what terms we use.
Yeah.
In Spin, we have started to combine two things. One is what we call a navigating idea. So all the work, the study, and so on leads to a navigating idea, which is a very simple, inspiring idea where to go. It can be very simple. For example, if it's a customer journey disruption, let's focus on disruption. We do everything for disruption. Or if it's about advice, it's sometimes it's a bit more inspiring. And this navigating idea helps us to do the use case. So we anchor this idea, and then we say, okay, now let's do value proposition design. Let's do prioritization of the innovation with this idea in the head. It's the big navigating idea. So that's and no jobs to be done anymore.
It's kind of, I mean, it's a special situation where we open up and say, okay, let's talk about jobs to be done. And in the end of the discussion, let's not talk about jobs to be done. But okay, so it's just, that's just sometimes the way it goes. Okay, so I mean, we've fulfilled the hour. If you want to stick around or have still some questions, I think we will stick around for a few minutes, but don't feel obliged to do so. I just want to really also, again, thank you very much, Jim, for joining us. That was really lovely. And yeah, I think we should keep the discussion going. So,
oh no, thanks for having me. I really admire the work that you guys do, and the webinars that you've been doing as well too. So happy to be part of that.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.